As live music begins its slow return, venues and the industry at large are reassessing the old practices and finding new ways to operate within the current restrictions. A lot will stay the same, but so much has changed too, including the musicians themselves. This is Kingston Live, and today we're joined by an artist that has taken the break as a chance to grow. If you're engaged with the local music scene, or have been listening to the podcast for a while, the name Savannah Shea might be familiar to you.
I'm broken into pieces. At least when I'm alone, I know what makes me whole.
Her soulful blend of jazz and folk music won her and her collaborator Michael Broadhead a spot among the finalists in the YGK Emerging Musician Competition in 2019. In the time since then, Savannah has focused on more than just her art. She stepped away from music at the beginning of the pandemic and took the downtime to take personal stock before returning with a pair of releases, the stripped-down EP The Day Of, and most recently, Winter Magnolia, a trio of songs that find Savannah embracing a more robust sonic palette.
There's always stuff happening. It's amazing.
I feel lucky to be here because Kingston has so many venues like that.
I think Kingston has a great music scene that is better than 90% of other towns of this size.
Once I got in, I was like, great, I'm here. I'm just going to start a band now.
Random bucket list item. Reid.
Random bucket list item. To drive throughout all of Canada, but also to try to travel to as many countries as possible. I mean, I don't know if that's random. I feel like that's very a very common bucket list, but
No, that's good.
Yeah.
That's I'm satisfied with that. Savannah.
Mine is drive across Canada. Get a van, drive across Canada. Same thing. I know that's not very interesting, but love it. John, go.
No, it's good. Oh, mine? Okay. I need to see whales before I die.
Yeah. So you know what you could do is you could drive across Canada and you could see some whales.
No, I can't do that. I hate driving.
Fair.
What if you were in
I-
the car? Like if someone was driving you?
No, I just don't like being in cars anymore. I'm an
interesting.
avid cyclist. I bike
Right.
everywhere.
Would you
Right.
bike across Canada?
Yeah.
That would be acceptable.
To the
Yes.
whales.
Okay.
Yes, maybe.
Yeah.
That
That's a
may-
good leg workout.
That's a
too.
better one.
Okay.
Yeah.
What
I
do
like that
you-
you're deciding my bucket list for me, but that's okay.
What do you imagine you will feel like when you see a whale?
I don't know. That's why I need to see one.
Right.
I've just always been fascinated with whales. They're just enormous and
Yeah.
amazing.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Interesting.
Great.
Reid, your turn.
Okay. 100 duck-sized horses
Oh my God.
or one horse-sized duck?
I have answered this question so many times, and every time it's different. It's got to be the little ones. It's got to be 100 duck-sized horses because, first of all, I think horses are less scary in general than ducks.
Right.
Like if they were both the same size,
Right.
I would rather be with a horse. And I think 100 horses, like little horses, I think kicking is easier. They can't fly.
Right.
Imagine a horse-sized duck flying and its teeth would be like shark teeth. Little. I'm answering little. I know this is rapid fire. Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm going to go with the giant duck
No.
only because
agree.
remember on the sesquicentennial anniversary of Confederation, they had that giant rubber duck going
Right.
along the water. I missed that.
But see, so
I know it's not going to be a rubber duck.
It's a
Well, that's the first time I answered this question. I had in my head that it was a rubber duck, and then I realized, no, like ducks are real.
like a mallard. Like think about how scary a Canada goose is.
Yeah.
And then make it bigger.
I hear you, but I feel like looking at like 100 little horses to me that like,
Cute.
but see, like I don't like mice. I don't like rats. I don't know why I go there,
Oh.
but I just feel like I'd be creeped out by just 100.
But ducks are much bigger
Little-
than rats.
That's true. But they'd be like.
Okay, moving on.
massive.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah. Anyway, this could go on forever.
Yeah.
Something you did not miss during COVID, Savannah.
Oh, just like having to cancel plans all the time because I was tired. Yeah, I just didn't have to because there were no plans.
Okay.
Okay, Reid.
Yeah, running into people that I didn't necessarily, I felt awkward about seeing or like didn't know how to strike up a conversation with. I find having my own space is a great thing, but I mean, yeah, obviously I missed people, so I'd rather have that.
Fair enough. I'll go with driving again.
Yes, established fact that you do not like cars.
Yeah.
Okay,
You got another one
my
for us?
turn. A muscular lower body with a normal upper body, or a muscular upper body with a skinny lower body?
Lower body.
Muscular.
Strong lower body. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. But that's like, I wonder if that's like a thing that I say. Okay, this is rapid fire. Sorry, lower body.
Lower body?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll go with the lower body just because I think of those pictures of the people that skipped leg day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll go with that.
I feel like both would look weird, but I think I might have to also go lower body.
Right.
Because, I mean, it's probably better for you to have a strong lower body than it is to
Right.
have a strong upper body.
Yeah, great question. I love it. Sorry I didn't bring any questions.
Easy.
One more. We're all musicians here. Biggest pre-gig source of anxiety.
Wow. I think just setting up. Like, it's just like getting there and just being ready in time. And then having, like, I feel like I'm always running behind to the point where I am, like, set up and then I have to start right away. And I love a gig where I have, like, 10 minutes in between being totally set up and ready. And then I just get to chill. And then, yeah. So I think it's just like everything working, technology working, and, like, my set list being there and all the band members. Also, when I'm in a band, like corralling everybody to be there on time.
Yeah.
Anyway.
An impossible task.
Right. It's impossible.
I don't know why. Like.
Yeah. And there's always one person in the band who's like just a free spirit and they're just never there.
Yeah, I'll get there when I get there. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, you're supposed to be on time.
I know.
I'd say set up as well. I try to, if I have a gig, make sure that if we're able to do it, like if we have a gig at 9 p.m. or somewhere later at night, I try to be like, hey, can we do this at like 2? So that way we can just get the sound check over with, get
Right.
everything set up, and then, get all the levels correct instead of rushing to the fact that we have to do this, because I find that those will always make for the better performances.
I agree.
Yeah, I always just hate getting in, rushing in, and then it just being a mess. You don't really feel like totally prepared
Yeah.
when you step on stage. So I always like the ease of just being able to just walk up and everything's all ready to go.
Yeah.
For the sake of brevity, yes to both of those answers.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're both just basically like, we're all just saying we're fancy and we want people to set up for us and we're going to be fancy about it.
Yeah.
And then we're going to just
Well,
walk in at the end.
In all seriousness, though, like I always, and I'm sure many musicians will agree, you love to play. Playing in front of people is a wonderful experience. Everything leading up to it sucks. Lugging the gear, organizing people, getting there, it's not fun. But but once you start playing the music, that's where you are reminded of why you do what you do.
Absolutely.
Picking your outfit too, that can be a challenge.
I love
But
picking my outfit.
do you know like the day of, like do you know like well beforehand what you're going to wear, or is it kind of like
no,
you
it's
just
like
decide?
a spur of the moment, following the intuition. You know,
Right.
you can feel when you put something on if it's aligned with your purpose for the evening or not.
Nice.
You know,
Love it.
yeah.
Savannah, thank you so much for joining us today on the Kingston Live podcast. This has been a long time coming. I wanted to
Yes.
have you on the podcast since I saw you perform at the YGK Emerging Musician
Oh.
show, which was like,
That was like 2 years ago.
almost 2 years
Yeah,
ago
I
now.
know.
That's so cool.
Crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Wild
but-
that we're here.
Yes, so we finally made it, and this is also the first in-person podcast we've done in about a year.
Yeah.
Wow.
Since October or September.
Was
I
that
think.
it?
Or
was it Tiny Horse the last one?
Tiny Horse was the last guest that we had on.
You
and
interviewed a tiny horse, like we were talking about.
we should ask Tiny Horse this question. That's so important.
It was one tiny horse, though.
Oh, not 100 tiny horses.
No.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, no, we're happy to have you. This is great. And it's so nice to be outside. I should mention, yes, we are in beautiful Lake Ontario Park. I was a little worried about doing this outside. We were actually supposed to do this last week, and we've had a lot of rain. It rained. We had a big storm last night, and I
Yeah, it
was
was
worried we
crazy.
couldn't do it. And I was going to say, let's do it tomorrow. And then Savannah was like, no, you know what? Let's do it today. And it turned out to be a beautiful day. So here we are. You can probably hear a bit of the splash pad. You might be able to hear the ice cream truck behind me. Yeah, just beautiful day. Great setting for a podcast.
just nice to get outside.
And it's nice to be outside, yes.
Nice to get outside, talk to people, Yeah.
Normally-
Reid bought me a lovely lawn chair, feeling very comfortable.
Yes, we're at the picnic table. Yeah.
Setting the scene.
Yes. Well, usually we like to do these in Skeleton Park because Skeleton Park's kind of sort of synonymous with the Kingston art scene, but I guess there's some construction there right now. So
Yeah, I love Skeleton Park. I don't have anything else to say about that, but I love it. That's
all good memories.
That's all good memories.
With the festival and just walking down
Walking
there.
through it, yeah.
There's a vibe in
Also,
that park, in that neighborhood.
I'm a suburbs kid. Like, I grew up in Kingston. I'm a suburbs kid. And then I remember, like, when I started to go downtown, and then I discovered Skeleton Park in my 20s, and I was like, what? This has been here this whole time?
See, that's really interesting, too, because I've talked to a lot of people about this and how, like, Kingston is such a pocketed city where, like, when you live in the West End or if you live in the East End, you kind of get caught in this bubble.
Yeah.
Do you find that it was kind of, like, you are so immersed now in the music scene? Did it take a lot for you to kind of figure out like where the music scene was? Because to me, I've lived downtown my whole life, so I've kind of always known it. Like, when did that kind of set into place for you that, like, oh, Kingston has an amazing, like, art scene?
Yeah, I think it's like, I feel like this is sort of self-centered to say, but it was like when I decided that I wanted to be a musician, I was like, well, I guess I have to go find it.
Yeah.
But I remember the first step I took to finding the Kingston music scene was I walked into YGK Cafe and was like, how do I play the open mic? Like, how do you get set up? Or like, how do I play a gig here? And Ryan was working the bar and he was like, come play the open mics as much as you can, and then like get to know the people that work here. And at the time, that was such a like fancy proposition, you know. I was like, okay, yes, I had this whole like businessy kind of plan of like, I'll come play the open mic every week, and then I'll like, after a month, I'll like make contact with the owners, and within like a couple weeks, I was like friends with everybody. And it's very chill. But yeah, it took a little bit of effort, and then even now, still like driving downtown to go play music is like an event, and it's still exciting, and I love, you know, but also, I'm starting, like, I have a gig in the West End regularly now for the, like, Days on Front food truck. So that's, like, there's music happening out there, too.
Right.
And hopefully the, like, downtown core can expand a little bit. And
so you're noticing a bit of a change, then, like, of these areas kind of immersing into more of an artistic scene?
Yeah, I mean, I think the suburbs will always be suburby.
Right.
But it's just fun to play music in my neighborhood, you know?
How do you think that can change, though? Like, how does that? How do you bring a scene into the suburbs? Like,
I feel like you're asking
both of you
such a big question.
I think it's kind of a mental state, really. Like, when we think of live music, we just think downtown. But I mean, there's tons of places in the West End that host live music.
Yeah.
So I think we just kind of need to remind ourselves once in a while that it's not all just the Toucan, it's not just the Mansion, etc.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's true. I agree. I completely agree. Well said.
About getting back into playing live, I think that's going to be weird for both musicians. This is July of 2021, just for context, for anyone who's keeping track of our COVID journey. Yes, things are starting to open up. Concerts are getting booked. It's funny, I've been thinking about this, and I'm not generally an anxious person, but even when I think about getting back into crowds, whether it's as a performer or as an audience member, the idea is a little weird. And I think it's going to take some getting used to again. I'm curious how you guys feel about that. Because in Savannah, you've already started getting out there again. What's it been like?
Yeah, so I feel like the way I think about leaving COVID, my sort of baseline analogy for anxiety is skiing. I don't know if you've ever skied, but if you like sit here and think about skiing, you're like, that's nuts. Like, who would ever go down a hill fast on 2 pieces of wood? Like, it just seems like such a crazy idea. But then when you get off the chairlift and you're at the top of the hill, you can do it and it's fine. And so I feel like a lot of my like leaving COVID anxiety is just conceptual, and like, I'm just like, what's it going to be like? What's it going to be like? And then every time I've been in a space with people, like I went to my first like dinner party again, and I played a couple shows, and every time I've been in those spaces, it's okay. And when I'm there, it's okay. I think, I think the like anxiety is surpassed for me by just like, when I am on stage, I'm like, finally, this is who I am. This is everything I want to do. I feel the most connected when I'm doing this. And like that to me kind of pushes the other stuff aside. But that's what I don't know. What do you think, Reid?
I mean, I feel like for myself, like it is very overwhelming to think about. And I think it's just about gradually putting myself in these situations again. Like I think, because I definitely know that if I get right into it right away, like going into crowds, playing music, and just like being out every night, like that sounds like a great idea, like initially, but then I realized that like I'd burn myself out very quickly, and then probably never go out again.
Yeah. The other thing too that I think about is like, I want to be so much more mindful about the life I'm creating post-pandemic, right? Because I feel like before we were all just kind of living chaotically, and it was like you're just doing, like, I don't think I was living very mindfully in terms of what I was choosing to do, you know? And I'm like, okay, let's take some of this pandemic Savannah and bring that energy forward so that like I'm choosing more strategically, like what things will actually serve me, what people are going to serve me, what spaces I want to go to that will like bring me joy, instead of just like blindly doing everything.
Yeah. I think that's the thing we all need to remind ourselves of getting into the post-pandemic world, is remembering what it was like before and what it was like during COVID, and who you were before and who you were during and who you're going to be moving forward, because we can't go back to the quote-unquote normal, the old normal, because normal wasn't working.
No.
And I think for a lot of us, there's been a lot of time to reflect and get back to zero and kind of rebuild. And I think if we're going to give way to this gaslighting that I'm sure is to come of, we got to get back to normal, I think that would be a mistake. I think there's that, there's been a lot of hardship, but with hardship comes growth, and if I think we're going to ignore that growth, that would be a big mistake.
Yeah, I think for me too, like a big realization is, I always felt like the need to like just recharge, and what does recharge mean, right? Like it used to mean just going to my apartment and just like isolating myself out from the world, right? Or maybe just chilling, but obviously this past year and a half that hasn't worked for me,
for sure.
And obviously it's been too much, and there's nothing wrong with if someone needs to do that and recharge that way, but I think for me there's now so many other reasons of how I can recharge while being active at the same time and keeping my mind going.
And maybe the life you were living where you had to like isolate to recharge was like too much, and maybe there's a way to live a more balanced life so that you don't have to do those dramatic like moments of like I can't see anybody or do anything or whatever, Well, Savannah, what's your experience been? Like, how has COVID changed you specifically? So I feel like I think about the quarantine in like sections, like the same way if you're like, not to isolate anyone, but if you're like doing a trip and you have like there's like different sections of a high, and you like, that was the time I was on the couch, and then I was in the forest, and then I was, you know what I mean? And I feel like quarantine has similar sort of like chunks. I like quit music at the beginning of the pandemic and was like, I'm never playing again. And that for me was just about like shedding my identifiers and being like, who am I without all of my identifiers? And then after so that was the first chunk. And then I had a chunk last summer where I was like, I fell in love for the first time, and that was like a really big experience, and then I had a chunk which was like basically everything after that, where I was like dealing with breaking up with somebody, and that was like a whole process. And through those sort of waves of up and down of like extremes of human emotion, I would just say that like I just learned a lot about myself. I came out as queer in January, so that was like a big thing for me, and it wasn't something that I had like, I know this isn't for everybody, but like for me it hadn't been something I was hiding or like not accepting in myself earlier. It just had never come up because I hadn't sat with myself for enough time to know, and so the personal growth has been kind of ridiculous, and I know like for all of the suffering and whatever, it's like I was super grateful to have that time with myself, and now I'm excited to be like, okay, so I've done all this internal work, I've done all this thinking, I've always been a thinker in this way and like overthinking a lot of the time, but now let's like take this new version of myself and test it against reality. Like let's test it against other people as an artist. How is this going to affect who I am as an artist? How is this going to affect, what relationships I seek to support or which ones I don't, put energy into, that kind of thing. So I feel like I'm an untested human right now. I'm a whole new person that has not been exposed to the elements.
I really like that. I hadn't thought of it that way, and I don't want to get too far off topic because this is a music podcast and not a philosophy podcast. Maybe we need to have another discussion.
Yeah.
But I really like that. I like the way you put it, that idea of sort of testing yourself, because, I think a lot of us have had an opportunity to get back to zero and do a little bit of soul searching. It has been untested, I think.
Yeah.
I think there is an opportunity post-COVID to get back out there and find out, okay, how does this new me fare against the world?
Definitely. And like from a musical perspective, I think.
Yes, please bring this back to music.
Yeah. That was me taking the cue. I mean, I think everything's connected. Like as a singer-songwriter, like every song I write is about the stuff we're talking about. So it doesn't feel, they don't feel separate to me. But from a more like professional musical standpoint, I think just a lot of my ideas about what I want have changed, and I guess like, I don't know if I'd say like morally, if that's the right word, but like I used to, when I was younger, I used to be like, I want to tour the world. And now I'm kind of like, I don't really think flying is great for the environment. And like, I probably am not going to do a tour that involves flying, with any kind of consistency. And like, even now I'm like, oh, I need to get a van. And I'm like, well, should I wait 5 years until I can afford to like lease an electric vehicle before I do a tour? And should I just really put energy into supporting like locals? And I'm not saying it's not on the individual musician to like save the planet, but, and then from a like community standpoint, I spent the last 4 years in Toronto at Humber studying music, and I built a music community there. And I was pretty sure until the pandemic that that's where I was going to settle. And now that I'm back in Kingston, I'm like, well, I feel like I have a way better opportunity to like provide meaningful connection in my community here because it's smaller, and I have more opportunities. And I'm like, I think everything got smaller musically with the pandemic. I'm like, I can have an impact without doing the most and being the most out in the world,
Going back to, you were talking about your writing style.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask how you got started in music, like that basic,
Yeah.
Where did you start playing music? And
for sure.
But I really want to know, because I've never known this before. You've always had such a mature writing style, and it always grows and grows as the years goes on, as I've seen you write music. How did that start for you? Like when did you learn? When did that intuition of being able to write and being so wise about it?
Well, you say always, but that's only what I've shown you, like you didn't see me at 12 years old doing like, I mean, no, I think that is partially true. My earliest like songwriting experiences, I mean, I wrote, I like was writing songs in my diary in like grade school about like, this is really embarrassing, but I remember like kind of discovering that there were people who like weren't as fortunate as me and like maybe didn't have like the means I had. And I remember writing a song about this. And if anyone, like, I have one friend who knows what this is and it's ridiculous. And I'm not going to say the lyrics because they're so dumb. But basically just being like, oh, this is like a sad thing, and like it's sad that people are, what I mean? Like sort of I feel like I was a old soul in the sense of like the pain of the collective consciousness pretty young, and I was writing about that. And then I would turn those songs, like when I had friends come over in elementary school, it was like, let's write songs, let's like play music, and I was sort of always pushing that. And then I guess the first like real songs I wrote were in that year when I started going to Musiki open mics, and then that's when Reid and I were in a band together, and I was starting to write for that. And like you saw me in those early days when like how excited I would get about anything was happening, and I was like, you have to sit and listen to what I did. And I at the time was like, this is the best, I was always really confident, and it was like, this is the best thing I've ever created. And now I'm looking back and I'm like, yeah, those songs, could use some work. But I think you just have to, I don't know if I'm even answering your questions. It just feels like, in the same way that it's like, well, why am I a singer? It's like, I don't know. it feels like it's a part of me, and I had people around me who supported that. I feel like writing and like words and playing with words is like a part of the like tool that I have to connect with people. Not to be pretentious about it, but it actually just sort of feels like a skill I have, and I'm gonna keep working with that.
Well, if it comes naturally to you, you just do it. Yeah, you don't really question it.
Yeah.
And not even to say like I've written so many bad songs, and it's like that's part of it. It's like part of what is like a skill, or like makes it a skill that you get to have, is that you can push through all the like the garbage stuff.
Do you have like a sort of a schedule in mind of when you're writing, or is it
a schedule?
Yeah, like it's like I'm gonna write a song a day, or
no.
It doesn't. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but like some people need to push themselves to do it. Mm-hmm. How does it come to you?
So,
you've done it so often that it just comes at this point, but
no, it doesn't. I mean, one of the greatest lessons I learned in this pandemic was that the way I function is not regimented. It's not scheduled. I will not succeed if I try to make myself do something every day, and I will feel shame if I try because I will always fail. And I'm not saying I can't grow into regimentedness, but what I actually think is more beneficial is the way that I function and thrive is I go like really hard into one thing for like a couple weeks, and then I give up on it. I don't give up on it, but I'm like, okay, great, that was fun. I like explored that, and then I'll find something new. And I'm never not moving forward, but it's very divergent. It's not like linear. It's not structured. So like, for example, I'll get like really into collaging and I'll do that. And then I'll like sell some collages, and then I'll get really into, right now I'm really into F1 racing or whatever. And like I think I just learned to accept in the pandemic that I used to think that was a weakness, but I'm like, no, I can go so deep into something, and I get like the way that I can get obsessed about a specific topic or a specific vibe of music or whatever serves me, because then I'll usually get something out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Kingston Live. Be sure to subscribe on your platform of choice and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can also hear our sister show, Kingston Live on air on Amherst Island Radio 92.1 FM and CFRC 101.9 FM. For show listings, artist info, and all things Kingston music, check out our new website, kingstonlive.ca.
One of the best quotes I read in the last little while was, "The best art you can make is the art that only you can make," which I just love. And with what you do, Savannah, I feel like there's an honesty to it, but there's an interesting sort of flow as well, because and I've noticed this too, you've pointed out how it doesn't always work in a verse, chorus kind of way. How does that come about? Is it from the writing, or is it the melody? What sort of takes it there?
I love these questions. I think I'm more of a verse person because I think I'm more storyteller oriented. Anytime I say I'm not great at something, what I really mean is I haven't put time into working on it. But I'm less practiced with choruses, hooks, that kind of thing. And the way that I sort of feel my music is like kind of like waves. Like it feels like, okay, we're gonna build, like if you remember in high school English when your teacher drew the like storyline of it's like the plot, there's the introduction, and then there's the exposition, and then there's the climax, and then there's the, like that's kind of how I visualize a song. So it's like, what's gonna be the point in this song that's the most. I also think I might just be putting hindsight intellectualization on something that doesn't actually have process in the moment. I think I want the lyrics. Okay, this is what I will say that I do know is true about my songwriting. Every lyric has to serve the thesis of the song. So when I write a song, it's like, what is this song about? And then every lyric has to actually like make sense. There's no extraneous words. I know a lot of people succeed at writing, like Bon Iver, I guess, writes like kind of nonsense lyrics, but there's still an emotional impact of that. For me, I'm like telling a story and it has to make sense. And I've gotten closer and closer to that as I've aged, to the point where I'm like, okay, now I'm writing songs from the perspective of like, what do you want to say? And then you exactly say that. And it's not like fancy metaphors and, Well, that might be a good moment for us to hear a song. Yes, so now
Savannah's
let
been
me
sitting
prove
with
that.
the guitar this entire time. I offered to let her put it down, but she was content to just hold it during
comfort.
this discussion.
Yeah, it's my like little comfort. It's my little shield.
Yes,
So
and
now,
we have kind of an unwitting audience, I think, here too. So this should be
that's great. There's a very cute dog walking slowly
there is.
towards me.
We're gonna make a friend. This is why I love podcasting on location.
Yeah, that's
a little
so
randomness.
Awesome.
Yes.
So I'm really hoping that my song just proves everything I said. Let me also say, I don't know. Every time it's different. Sometimes I spend months and months working on a song. Sometimes it comes all at once. I don't know. Whatever. Do your thing.
Just gotta
There's
go
no
with it.
rules. Okay, so this song is called 3 Possible Names.
Now, is this new?
This is brand new. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. This is from like a couple weeks ago. It's my second newest song. And one possible title is The Last Song of Spring, alternatively The First Song of Summer. It was kind of on the border of those two seasons. And then the last possible title is Unrooted. Maybe we'll talk about it after. Maybe I won't like give anything away, and we'll see. I want to see how clearly my thesis comes across now that I've said that. Can you hear guitar okay?
Yeah.
I've lived a life travel through. I close my eyes and I cut it loose. If I go first, they'll never know I'm not cut out to be a home. So I grow a heart and I give it away. And I leave this city and I start again. If I put down roots, will I dry up without the rain? Will it make it hard to walk away to something somewhere else someday? And if I grow with you, what happens when you go, or if I go? I'm broken into pieces. At least when I'm alone, I know what makes me whole. I've convinced myself that these four walls are keeping me from moving on. So I paint them white and I sell my clothes, and I tell myself I'm letting go. I've pulled my roots so many times that I don't even recognize my loneliness is nothing like the freedom that I've heard described. If I put down roots, will I dry up without the rain? Will it make it hard to walk away to something somewhere else someday? And if I grow with you, what happens when you go, or if I go? I'm broken into pieces. At least when I'm alone, I know what makes me whole.
Thank you. Wow, full audience, so nice. That was fun.
We've talked about before, and like you used to kind of have a bit of a struggle with what kind of music you want to put out and who you are as an artist. Like that, it's always been sort of before anyway, the internal question that you've always had. And I feel like you've kind of answered this in some of the previous questions.
Yeah.
Is that something that you kind of still struggle with of being like, I want to put out a soul record, or I want to put out a folk record? Do you have that internal struggle still, or is it kind of still, is it more free flowing and your whatever music comes out?
Yeah, I don't think about it anymore. I think more about like who are the people I would put on a record, like what's the band gonna like. I do still think about like what is this music gonna sound like, but It's not from a like genre perspective. You know, I think my very dear friend, our dear friend Heather Evans, who is a genius, once said, if you're not sure what to do, don't worry, just do stuff, and the path will like become clear, because you'll just be doing stuff, you know. And if you look back, you'll be like, oh, look at what I did. That's what I'm doing. So for songwriting, it's like, well, I write songs and I have I mean, to say I have a body of work now is sort of pretentious, but I do. I have like, 40 songs that I'm really proud of, and I can look at that set of songs and be like, oh, that's my sound, Right. And now the trick is to not create to like I don't want to create to fit my own sound, like I have to keep like moving forward. I can't cycle back into what I've already been doing. But I mean, I think I just write songs and it's like, okay, there's a song.
Right.
That's an interesting point, too, because I think a lot of musicians kind of create a brand for themselves, and then they get stuck in that brand.
For sure.
Like, if the Rolling Stones decided to do opera now, people would hate it, right? You have that thing that you're known for, but that's not necessarily going to be the thing that you're going to be forever, right? People are constantly changing.
Constantly changing. And I've definitely been in that trap before, and like, you know, when you pick up your guitar and your fingers go to the same places, it's like, okay, you know, you have to sort of push yourself. So for me, I would say my current, like, if I had to brand myself, what I want is that my lyrical content has some like elements of honesty, probably nature, some like some sort of spiritual energy. Like I think it's more about the content of the lyric than what the music is doing. Like that's what, and I want to be able to, I had the opportunity to interview Paul Langlois earlier this year, and he said like he just had to believe his own songs. Every song, he wouldn't put a song on a record that he couldn't play and like stand behind. And that, to me, that's the brand, you know, believing in your own art.
Yeah.
And basically the brand being is who you are
For sure.
as a person.
Yeah, and there's some songs that I have that I've written that I play, and by the fourth minute, I'm like, oh, this is boring. Like, I don't even like this song. And it's like, okay, well, that song needs some work then. Like, what are you going to do to make yourself, to get from not believing to believing in that song?
Right.
Yeah.
And you released an EP.
Yes, I released 2 EPs over the quarantine, but the more professional of the 2 is called Winter Magnolia, yes. It's a 3-song EP. I made it as my thesis project for my music degree at Humber, and I love it. I think it's excellent. I'm very proud of it, and I'm proud of the musicians that played on it, and yeah, I don't know. I'd love to talk about it more. Do you have any questions?
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, so all these musicians that were on this EP come from Humber. When did you have an idea of what you wanted to have be on the EP? Like, what tell us about the process of just going into it.
Awesome. Yeah. So definitely like, you know, when you're doing the degree, you know that by your 4th year, you'll be recording something. So you kind of think about it the whole time. And I think the restrictions that COVID put on the process of recording were actually really good for me, because I would have probably tried to do too much. Like, I would have made it too big. And then what I ended up doing was basically having a trio. So Michael Broadhead on bass, who's a Kingston guy. You know, I've been playing with him for 12 years, which is wild, and he's at Humber now too. So he played on it, and then an amazing drummer, Mitch Milley, who's opening for the Glorious Sons with JJ Wilde coming up on tour, which is very fun.
Cool.
Just a little plug for 2 musicians I love. So basically, I worked in a trio with them, and then everything extraneous to that was done in people's homes outside of the studio. So it ended up being really simple. Actually, also I had 2 guys, John and Josh, play on the final track, Father's Garden. And it felt kind of vital because we rehearsed once, you know, with masks on, very in a rush because it was COVID and it was scary to rehearse. And then we went into the studio, and all prior years of my degree, the speech was like, if you are going into the studio, you need to be preparing 6 months in advance. You need to have, like, you know, and then it was like, well, we got to rehearse once, and now let's record this EP. And that to me felt kind of aligned with the energy that I have of just like, what's happening right now? Like, let's do it. It's quick. Right. It's in the moment. And I'd like to like develop a little more professionalism and consistency, but it felt really good. Oh my gosh.
That's amazing. Okay.
Such a huge chunk of a tree.
Just fell off a tree.
That was amazing.
Whoa.
I don't know if that was picked up by the mic, but that was pretty neat. And now a cooler fell over, which is completely unrelated
It's
to
chaos here.
the tree falling over. Yeah.
That's like the biggest piece of a tree I've ever seen fall. If anyone was
like somebody was
curious.
splashing into the water. That was
Wow.
What were we talking about?
I don't know. Yeah, I made an EP. I think you should listen to it. It's on themes of nature and love in the universe, and you know, I'm really proud of it.
Can you talk a bit about more your experience at Humber?
Yeah.
Both good and bad.
Definitely. I think so I feel like the people this year, we sort of all left Humber on a bit of a sour note because there's some challenges with the administration at the moment, and the music program isn't getting the support it needs. The faculty is not getting the support it needs. So I'm currently not thrilled about what Humber's doing, and I really hope that they turn around and support their staff properly, because the teachers there are amazing. And if the program is run correctly, it's unreal. I had an amazing time in my 4 years. It's like, you know, you're put in a space with 150 other people that think basically like you, which can be dangerous, but also really exhilarating when you just, I would go whole days, like 12-hour days at school, and I would only talk about music, and that isn't always what you want, but it's such a fun opportunity to have. And then I learned so much through peers. Like, I feel like even I did a couple other years at other schools, and I was always learning the most in the dining hall, like just like talking to people. And that's what Humber felt like for me. It was like we would have our classes, whatever, and then we would just spend the night playing music together. And that's where I was like doing my actual learning. And I wanted to quit so many times, but I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't, because I got a lot out of the last year. And I don't know, I think being a part of an institution at this current moment is not a super appealing thing. I think institutions are at odds with art in a lot of ways. And I especially think the way music schools are run historically are at odds with like the origins of music, especially a jazz school, which is like music that was developed in the south of the United States by Black people, and then now in Canada it's like taught in a stuffy institution by white people. And what is prominent, there's a very cute dog really close to me, hi puppy. What is prominent in those institutions is like putting skill and like technical abilities over any kind of feeling emotions, and like most of the profs are white men, and it just is like taking it out of the space of its origins. And I think institutions have a lot of problems they need to sort out, and there's lots of like fancy words about diversity and inclusion and equity going around without very much action happening. So I don't know, I'm grateful I got to leave when I got to leave. I'm grateful I got to be there, but I hope that we can like sort of deconstruct our artistic institutions in Canada a little bit and reframe them.
Reid and I were both curious about your experience in Toronto, just in general, with music, because with the Kingston Live podcast, we're deep into the local scene of Kingston,
For sure.
which we love. But I feel like we've created kind of an insular environment for ourselves. What's it like in Toronto versus Kingston?
Oh, it's so beautiful. I loved the Toronto music scene so much. It's what I think is maybe the most like different from a business perspective is you're not going to make money playing shows. Like here, if I play a show, like I'll probably, like I'm playing YGK on Sunday, I'm splitting it 3 ways. I'll probably get like $70 at least, you know,
Right.
maybe more. But in Toronto, you're on a bill with a whole band that you're in, and then usually you're on a bill with like 3 or 4 bands. And then you're splitting the door, and usually the people that come to your shows are like other musicians, you know what I mean? And that's sort of the scene in terms of like the bar scene and like the venue scene. And I'm sure there's like another echelon of scene that's, you can make money in. But I wasn't making money, but the vibe of getting to like the people that I got to play with, it's just you're selecting from a larger pool, so you get more diverse groups of people to play with. The best thing that was happening right before COVID was there was this thing called the Big Fam Jam happening, which was just like every Monday night, all of the coolest people I've ever met would go to this bar, and it would just be a free jam, and anyone could go on stage, and the music was all improvised, and it was so fun. And just to have, and I feel similarly about YGK in that way, like especially in its earlier days when I was starting out, like it was a place I didn't need to plan social activity, because I would just like, I'll go to YGK and all my friends will be there, and then we would play music together, and that I felt that in Toronto in a different way. And I think also like the music that is in Toronto is just more diverse. Like Kingston has sort of like a folk, rock, sometimes jazz, blues, dad rock energy, which is like fine, and I love it. And I hope that I think since I've been gone and come back, there's definitely way more going on now than there was when I was here originally. And I'm excited to see that like hopefully come out after the pandemic. There was a cool rap scene happening that I saw at open mics occasionally, and like I know that happens, and I wasn't privy to it, but I hope that these scenes can kind of integrate to be more diverse in Kingston, because having that in Toronto was it just serves everybody if everything is more diverse. I feel like I said this on the last time I talked to you.
But stepping into that, did you find that kind of like doing the Fam Jam stuff, did you find that really intimidating, or was it more exciting initially?
It was exciting. I don't think there's nothing in a space musically that really like scares me too much. Like I don't feel, when I stopped tying my personal worth to my abilities as a musician, I was much freer, and I was able to just go and be in musical spaces and not be concerned,
Right.
I think I used to, like, maybe a couple years ago, I would have gone to a jam and been like, oh, I can't go up. I'm not good enough. People aren't going to like me, blah, blah, blah. But then I was like, I play music. These people are awesome. I'm awesome. I think it's like a confidence thing, right?
Right.
And I don't know, like, you know, thanking my lucky stars that I have that, because it makes it easier to be in the world. But yeah, I think I just enjoy making music so much, and I love talking to musicians so much, and it's just like, yeah, this is the perfect chance. I'm gonna go and hang out with musicians. And I'm speaking from a very narrow, like, limited perspective on what the Toronto music scene is. Like, I had kind of barely a glimpse into it while I was there, because even in my first couple of years, I was doing the, like, college thing where you kind of stay insular, and the way it's gonna open up after COVID too will be really different than what I experienced. So it's hard to say, but I loved it, and I'm honestly very happy to be back in Kingston, and I hope to get a vehicle so I can drive to Toronto and be there sometimes, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just go back and forth.
Yeah, I'd love to make Southern Ontario my community, you know?
I like that.
I wanted to ask you about performing, because you seem very comfortable in front of a crowd. I don't know if you actually are, but you seem comfortable in front of a crowd. But you also have a way of kind of like shrinking the room. There's an intimacy to the performance.
Oh.
I don't even, are you conscious of that? Is that deliberate? Where does that come from?
Wow, I got chills when you said that. That's such a cool idea. Definitely comfortable. Like, I still get nervous, but I love being in front of people. Like, my dream actually is to be a stand-up comedian. Like, I just love to, you know, talk and be in front of people. But I think the shrinking of the room, that's really interesting. I think it maybe the context that we're in right now, like this sort of vulnerable kind of folky context, maybe has that effect. Definitely if I'm playing with a band and it's more of like the outward projection, then that might not happen. But I think something that I learned pretty early on playing open mics and like bar gigs, you know, I used to do like a 4-hour gig at Blue Martini, and everyone would just be watching, hung along, sing along to the machinery. Yeah, I used to do these long bar gigs, and when you want people to listen and they're not listening, singing louder doesn't do it. You can't like push out a song and expect people to listen. You actually have to get quieter, because then people are like, oh, what's happening? I don't know why that works, but that's what I think works. And I think I try to do that, try to use like the low dynamic level to my advantage in that way.
That's interesting, because my instinct is always to get louder, but maybe that was wrong.
Well, I think it's like, if the function of you getting louder is to like emotionally serve your song, then that makes sense. But if the function of you getting louder is to like try and force people to listen to you, that like inauthentic like intention, I'm guilty of it too, but like that intention is gonna be apparent, I think.
That's really interesting. Okay.
It's like you you can't be too needy about it.
Right. Who are you serving, yourself or the audience?
Exactly. Or the art. It's not even you.
Right,
it's like, are you serving the song and what the song needs in that moment? Yeah.
Savannah, what's next for you?
Oh, fun. What a fun question. I say that seriously and sarcastically. I'm immediately next. I said I'm playing on Sunday. I don't know when this is coming out, but I'm playing.
Maybe in a week or so.
Okay.
Probably not Sunday.
Great.
Before Sunday.
So last week I played at Music Cafe and it went so well, and everyone gave me a lot of money and it was perfect. I'm teaching right now, so I'm sort of setting up my own teaching practice and trying to gig in Kingston. And a goal for this year, if I'm going to speak openly and honestly about my big goals, I'd love to put out an amazing 10-song record that I've worked very hard on and spent time with. Less chaotically probably than my EP, hopefully more intention. And I'd love to play a show at the Bader. I think that's a big goal I have. I'm just putting it out in the universe. Anyone wants to help me do that? A show of my original music, and I love that space so much. And so what's next for me? I'm going to be a musician until I don't want to anymore. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I like it. Savannah, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so happy this worked out. I'm so happy the weather worked out.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that there were dogs and trees falling down and lawnmowers and all kinds of crazy stuff. This is what I love about on-location podcasting.
It's wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. And if anyone wants to call me out on anything I said or chat, you can follow me at Savannah Shea Music on Instagram. It's SHEA Music. I'm pretty friendly. Have a convo.
Do we want to hear another song, or do we just want to stick with one?
That's up to you.
I would love to play another song.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Don't make me play.
Don't make me sing.
The classic. That was another thing I resolved to myself was if someone asked me to sing, I would never say no. Like when I was like 14, if anyone ever asks me to sing, I'm not gonna say no. And that's been good.
I've only listened to talk radio for the last 3 months, but on the long drive home I put on a song that you told me about when we were in the city and the snow was on the ground. And I heard it like a song, not as a product of its parts, and I cried out loud 'cause I felt it in my heart. This is the 3rd time now that I've walked away from us to wonder if there's more to the way I already love you. And are you waiting for your words 'cause you're scared of being wrong, or are you fighting with a feeling that can't be described at all? Wanna hold the silence open like an old screen door. But I'm trying not to keep my thoughts from turning into words I've surely said before. And if you wanna write it down, I'd read it over and over. Sometimes it feels like pulling teeth trying to get to know you. I'm sorry if the wondering is more than you expected. I'm hoping that you're wandering back in my direction. There's a conversation left unsaid underneath the surface. Sometimes I think I'll bring it up, but I'm not sure it's worth it. Knowing someone living far away could love you like no other. I think about you all of the time till you become someone I remember. I'll think about you all the time till you become someone I remember. I'll think about you all the time till you become someone I remember. I think about you all the time. This is the 3rd time now that I've walked away from us to wonder if there's more to the way I already love you.
Thank you.
This has been Kingston Live. We encourage you to rate us on your listening platform of choice and subscribe where possible. Kingston Live was produced in Kingston at Titan Sound, hosted by Reid Cunningham and John Sanfilippo. Writing and research by Peter Sanfilippo. Voiceovers by Riley Jabor and John Sanfilippo. Promotional assistance by Jackson Coulter and Reid Cunningham. Executive producer Rob Howard. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at podcast@kingstonlive.ca.